Hey, my handsome ladies and gentlemen, this is Shmeaty. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. I threw this team together featuring a pretty spicy pick in the Spring Cup, and that is Shadow Marshtomp. The rationale behind it being that ground type damage is at a massive premium in the Spring Cup meta, and the reason for that is because the types that have gravitated toward the top of the meta are the poison and steel subtyping. That goes without saying, but let's see if Shadow Marshtomp is able to perform in the Spring Cup. Kicking things off, of course, with game number 1, it's going to be Shadow Marshtomp leading into a Tropius. We are at a type disadvantage matchup here, which isn't necessarily the worst thing ever. We are going to fire off 7 mud shots and a Sludge. One thing I love about Marshtomp, it has access to the buff Sludge, and that does 50% of the Tropius' HP. Tropius, a really bulky Pokemon. We go for the one further mud shot, the catch onto the Ferrothorn, the screenshot for the boys, and now they are going to bring in their Empoleon on Metal Claw as well. Ferrothorn on the safe switch on this team is going to be on Metal Claw. It actually is able to bait out quite a bit of Pokemon, and at the ELO I was playing at, I will say not everyone will fall for this, but I was baiting out consistently Pokemon that didn't have the best matchups into Metal Claw Ferrothorn, as we'll see in this video. I'm going to fire off this Power Whip onto the Empoleon. It does do a sizable amount of damage. They threw a Drill Peck, but because of the Metal Claw fast move pressure being next to non-existent here, I'm pretty sure I can tank this next Drill Peck. I'm going to let this go, and now I do have a Power Whip. Oh, I said that with way too much confidence. Down goes the Ferrothorn, and we're going to have to shield up the Marshtomp, but that's not the worst scenario ever, because they're going to bring back in their Tropius, but now Marshtomp is ahead on energy. I'm going to be able to shield up the Leaf Blade, going for 4 further mud shots and the Sludge. They aggro pivoted into the Tropius, but the Tropius is going to have its work cut out for it, as we're going to be able to get to Sludge number 2. They didn't have enough energy for a further Leaf Blade there, so down goes the Tropius. Empoleon is in farm down range for the Marshtomp. What is it that this trainer decides to do? They're going to bring in their final Pokemon, and it is Tentacruel, and I'm over-farming as much as I can. Wait the turn to see if they attempt to catch on the Mud Bomb. Back in comes the Tentacruel. We farm down their Empoleon, and this is just GG's. Mud Bomb lands, and they probably don't want to play the game anymore, but we beat them to the top left with a Mud Bomb, and that'll be a GG to this trainer. In the next match, it's going to be Shadow Marshtomp leading into Jellicent. Not the best lead, definitely not the worst lead. I am going to throw 1 mud shot safe switch into the Metal Claw Ferrothorn, and they do something pretty confusing. They are going to counter switch with a G-Zing, and now I'm going to fire off a Mirror Shot. Mirror Shot is going to be shielded by the G-Zing, and we get the attack drop. Absolutely massive for us, firing off a second Mirror Shot here, and this will not KO, but they are going to no shield it and get debuffed a second time. From this range, I think even a -2 overheat would still get the KO there, but I'm going to just shield it up, and now this is a -4 overheat. I'm confident this one won't KO. Oh my goodness, that still did so much damage. In comes the Jellicent. I try to click on my Power Whip button, but I think they win the CMP tie there, unfortunately. They KO with the Surf. I'm going to bring in my Cacturne, and now I am going to confidently no shield, assuming that this is the Surf. The Surf still does quite a bit of damage onto the Cacturne. I'm going for the farm down, and we are able to get it. However, they still have that G-Zing with a little bit more health than I would like. They bring in the G-Zing, they just let it die. Neato. And now we are going to be able to fire off a Trailblaze here. Trailblaze grabs the shield, and now this is a boosted Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch +1 onto Lapras. We'll pick up the knockout. The screenshot for the boys. GG's. In the next match, Shadow Marshtomp into Shadow Mawile. This is going to be pretty interesting. They immediately switch out, which tells me a lot of what I need to know. But they switch out into a pretty problematic Pokemon for this team, as it's going to be Pelipper. Pelipper is going to fire off a move onto the Ferrothorn. Debatably should have shielded this, as they wouldn't build up to the Hurricane and bait there in most instances. I'm going to build up past the Power Whip and fire off some energy here, hoping they shield up a potential Thunder, and they do. We get the shield there, so that's pretty nice. I am now in Weather Ball range, however. I'm just going to decide to let it go. This is getting tricky, though. I'm going to overfarm with the Marshtomp play into the winning CMP tie. Yes, Marshtomp has some very large biceps, despite what you might be seeing on your screen right now. Pelipper is now quite low. they are going to fire off some energy onto the Marshtomp. Can't really afford to let it go down here, as we know that it has a positive matchup into at least one of their remaining Pokemon. They are now going to counter swap my aggressive pivot into the Cacturne, gets answered with the Mantine. Mantine is going to go for the full wing attack down. You hate to see it. However, Mantine does not have 2 moves yet, so I am just going to shield up this Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace is going to get my final shield, and I'm clicking on my Sludge button, hoping that this Sludge will be enough to KO the Mantine. Mantine's pretty bulky, but it gets taken out. And now, it's all up to if they decide to bring in that Mawile. They do. I wait the turn. The game updates. We get the Mud Bomb. This Mud Bomb is going to land and KO the Mawile from full HP. In comes the Pelipper. Its worst nightmare, getting 1v3'd by a Marshtomp. GG's. And into the next match, it is going to be Marshtomp into Cacturne. And generally speaking, you would think that that would be an okay matchup for the Marshtomp to stay in. However, it most certainly is not. Marshtomp would take way too much damage from Sucker Punches and inevitably boosted Sucker Punches after they throw the Trailblaze, that it would not be a matchup worth staying in for. Although you have the pacing advantage with the Sludge and can grab a shield, you would just take way too much damage. This Cacturne is on Dark Pulse, that is quite the surprise, and now they have torn through 1.5 of my Pokemon and I'm going down a shield. This is not the best feeling ever. I'm going to bring in my own Cacturne to get the farm down. However, in comes their Gastrodon. Wait a second. Because they bring in the Gastrodon into this matchup where I have this loaded energy and they're likely going to have to shield, I feel as if I'm going to have to shield up this Cacturne here. The reason being is because the only reason you'd ever bring in Gastrodon here is if there's an even worse matchup into Cacturne in the back. And the only thing that could possibly be worse into Cacturne in the back is going to be Jellicent. Jellicent gets brought in, loses almost all of its HP. Marshtomp's still at full HP here. So we are going to be able to tank this Shadow Ball. They are of course going to go for the harder hitting Shadow Ball. It does almost 90%, but that's fine by me because I have this Mud Bomb, and the Stab Mud Bomb KOs the Jellicent. GG's to this trainer. In the next match, it's going to be Marshtomp leading into the familiar Tropius lead. I'm not opposed to this lead, as we've seen how much a Sludge can do. They're going to be able to outpace and fire off the Leaf Blade on alignment, but throwing their energy on alignment there is not to their benefit. They're going to be able to grab an early shield, which is fine by me, because I'm just going to be able to retaliate with the Sludge, and now I can outpace them, and before they're able to throw their next Leaf Blade, I can get another Sludge off, and either get both shields or some significant damage onto this Tropius. Tropius gonna fire off one more Air Slash, was hoping for the one Mud Shot and catch of the Leaf Blade onto the Ferrothorn where it would be double resisted. Unfortunately, all I catch is an Aerial Ace and some Tropius hands for the road. They are going to be able to fire off one further move here. I didn't throw the Mirror Shot as there was no way it was ever going to KO from that range, so I'm going to overfarm as much as I can, fire off a Mirror Shot when I do believe it would be able to pick up the knockout, and now it all comes down to what they decide to bring in. It's going to be a Swampert getting brought into my Ferrothorn. What is happening? Power Whip onto the Swampert, will grab a shield, and now they are going to be able to fire off a move here. Debatably, I could have shielded there and made another Power Whip, but I just wanted to go for massive Cacturne farm here, and it seems as if that was the right play because they no longer want to play upon seeing the Cacturne. GG's. Getting into the next match, Shadow Marshtomp leads into Ferrothorn. Shadow Ferrothorn at that. These Bullet Seeds doing a tremendous amount of fast move pressure, so I attempt to catch at a very opportunistic time, and I'm able to get it. We are able to get the Power Whip catch, wasting all that Ferrothorn energy. In comes a Gastrodon to greet us, but they didn't even build up. That is not an Earth Power. I'm not shielding that. It's going to be a Body Slam. It doesn't do a lot of damage as Ferrothorn's quite bulky, and I'm going to be able to fire off this resisted Mirror Shot bait. Mirror Shot will be able to grab a shield from the Gastrodon. Gastrodon is going to fire off yet another Body Slam, as the Gastrodon players love to do. Click on their screen, fire off Body Slam, fire off Mud Slap, you know the drill. Going for another Mirror Shot here. Mirror Shot is going to get a second shield from the Gastrodon, but no debuffs for us, meaning that we're not going to be able to reach that last second Power Whip. No DRE for me either, so I'm going to bring in Cacturne, and Cacturne up 2 shields to 0 is going to be quite menacing into the opponent's team. However, this 2 shield advantage is not going to last very long, as I can't really afford to no shield a Body Slam here. Body Slam is a truly terrible move coming from Pokemon without that much of an attack stat. They're going to hard pivot into a Dugong. That is a very interesting play. I'm sending the Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch nearly one-shots the Dugong. It gets farmed down with one further Sucker Punch. And now, what is it they decide to bring in? This Pokemon is going to be a problem for the remainder of their team regardless. They bring in the Gastrodon, and they just gave Cacturne more energy. They top left. GG's. Getting a little bit of deja vu. This is going to be Shadow Marshtomp leading into another Ferrothorn, this time non-Shadow and Metal Claw, meaning that I can stay in this matchup pretty comfortably, play into the winning CMP tie on the 8th Mud Shot, and this is going to be a Mud Bomb that does a significant amount of damage onto that Ferrothorn. Of course, it's going to be the Power Whip, so I'm going to shield it up. And now, it all depends on what they decide to do here. They bring in their Feraligatr. This is an interesting play. This is a non-Shadow Feraligatr, so now I can just pivot into my Cacturne. If they throw anything that is less than an Ice Beam, I do not have to respect this move. The reason being is because an Ice Beam would one-shot, and from a Shadow Feraligatr, I would be in a lot of trouble if I no-shielded a Hydro Cannon. However, a non-Shadow Feraligatr, you're going to have to do more than just a Hydro Cannon to get rid of the Cacturne. Cacturne lands the Trailblaze and some boosted Sucker Punches on the Ferrothorn for the road. Ferrothorn did get a couple Metal Claws there, so I gotta tread carefully here when bringing in the Marshtomp, as I know that they're going to be able to reach a Power Whip before I'm able to reach my Mud Bomb. I'm okay with that fact, however, because I'm just going to shield up the Power Whip, and now in comes a Tentacruel and Trainer. Who's going to tell him? Which one of you is going to tell him this is a truly terrible matchup? Well, I guess he's going to find out as the Mud Bomb lands, does about 90% of the Tentacruel's HP, and they no longer want to play. GG's. Oh, once again, who's going to tell him? Shadow Marshtomp leading into Tentacruel, immediate safe switch into the Bullet Seed Ferrothorn, answered with my Metal Claw Ferrothorn. Metal Claw Ferrothorn going to be able to strike first with the Mirror Shot, and we're going to be able to get a debuff immediately. You love to see it. They're going to fire off some energy here, and it's likely to be a Flash Cannon, but the Flash Cannon does next to no damage. We are at relative amounts of HP here, because my fast move pressure is actually kind of adding up as opposed to theirs. It might not feel like it, but they're on Bullet Seed, which is guaranteed to be doing like 1 damage to Ferrothorn. Let's be aggressively honest here. They're going to fire off another Flash Cannon here, but I can no-shield this one as well. And as you can see, they're in the yellow, and I am not. I'm going to fire off 4 further Metal Claws and yet another Mirror Shot here. Maybe we get another debuff here, but I don't even think that's necessary for us to win this matchup. Just going to start spamming off these Mirror Shots. In the future, I would probably, if I didn't want to spend 25 minutes on a game of Pokemon Go, bring in the Cacturne. They aggro pivot back into the Tentacruel and catch the Mirror Shot, which is okay, because now I just get to align it back onto the Marshtomp here, and Marshtomp's going to have a fine time dealing with the Tentacruel. Firing off a Mud Bomb onto the Tentacruel, who's going to tell him? Down goes the Tentacruel. They have a lot of energy on this Ferrothorn, though. I'm going to shield up, may as well. Power Whip will get my shield, and unfortunately, they'll get both of my shields here. But that does mean that Marshtomp should be able to get a pretty nice farm down here, and all this energy is definitely going to be useful for whatever they have in the back. We're firing off a Mud Bomb onto the Hisuian Electrode in the back. Hisuian Electrode is going to be able to reach the Wild Charge, but it's going to land onto the Ferrothorn, not exactly where they would have liked to place that move. And now I'm going to reach for the Power Whip, and they are going to allow us to get it. -2 in their defense. They are going to have to shield up this move. Hisuian Electrode already quite glassy, and not really a fan of no shielding moves. But definitely not when they're -2 in their defense. They're going to fire off a move onto the Shadow Cacturne. But here's the kicker. This is not going to be enough to KO. Although Shadow Cacturne's known for being quite glassy, they bring in the Ferrothorn in an attempt to reset their debuff, but unless they're able to triple up on charge moves here, there's no way they can win. We're going to be able to land a Sludge onto the Hisuian Electrode, and that'll be a GG. We've made it to the final game of the video, and fun fact, this video would have one less battle in it if Niantic had actually, got their game together. The glitch that I'm about to refer to has been in the game for as long as I've been playing it, and from others that I've heard, this glitch has been in the game for about like 3-4 years. Sometimes, oh my god, I just got Ice Beam, feels terrible, man. Sometimes you accidentally queue into the wrong league, and in this case I queued into the Master League because I was trying to work on some Master League content, and I accidentally queued into the Spring Cup and immediately queued out and queued back into the Master League, got an instant queue, and then I was given my Spring Cup team and queued into a Spring Cup game. So you love to see it. Anyway, the Sludge lands onto the Hisuian Electrode. Hisuian Electrode shows no respect for the Sludge coverage on the Marshtomp. Mirror Shot is now going to be fired off at the Galarian. Wheezing, Jeezing, going to put up a shield here. I'm going to be able to fire off a move. One of my only remaining lose cons is no shielding and overheat here, so I'm going to shield up the overheat, fire off a Mirror Shot, and Mirror Shot does do some sizable damage onto the Jeezing. If they decide to no shield, they're going to double down, double shield the Jeezing, and now if they go for another overheat here, I will go down, but I'm okay with that fact. Overheat connects, KOing the Ferrothorn in one shot. In comes the Marshtomp, an intelligent catch by the opposing trainer. However, it will not be enough to save them. Mud Bomb lands onto the Hisuian Electrode. Hisuian Electrode goes down. In comes the Jeezing. They know they're going to get outpaced. GG to this trainer. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Would I recommend that you run Shadow Marshtomp in the Spring Cup? Well, it is toward the end of the Spring Cup rotation, and this is one of the few metas where I feel like it has as much play as it did in the Spring Cup, and unfortunately I discovered it quite late into the Spring Cup. But I will say, if you have one built and want to have some fun, I definitely recommend it. Maybe not necessarily with the team I ran with it. I had a lot of fun with this team, but the results that I had are far too inconsistent to recommend it for elo climbing. With all that being said, thanks once again so much for watching. I've been Shmeaty. I hope to see you all again next time, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.